If your sales meetings feel like just another meeting, it may be time to raise your sales curve on purpose. Lauren Rial knows that new sales is life to a water treatment company, and he helps teams build the skills and habits to make that happen. Using simple, real-world case studies from water treatment and collaborative discussions, Lauren shows salespeople and managers how to manage opportunities, ask better questions, and move prospects to decisions. He offers sales training, keynote talks at sales meetings and conferences, and consulting specifically for water treatment companies. Lauren is available to speak at your next water treatment sales meeting or conference, or work directly with your team in a training or consulting role. And if you don't feel his session was useful, his speaking or consulting fee is 100% waived. Learn more by visiting scalinguph2o.com/realwater. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/realwater. Real sales training, real sales motivation, and real sales experience. That's Rial Water. Scaling Up Nation, are you looking for precise liquid level monitoring? Pyxis Labs' new radar level sensor series has you covered. With accurate monitoring up to 50 feet and wireless Bluetooth configuration via the Pyxis app, our sensors offer unparalleled convenience. Plus, LoRa technology enables long-range data acquisition. Experience the future of level monitoring today. Water professionals deserve better tools, and Pyxis Lab delivers. Go to scalinguph2o.com/Pyxis. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/PYXIS. Pyxis, because water professionals deserve better. Welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast, the podcast where we scale up our knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. I'm Trace Blackmore, the host of the Scaling Up H2O podcast. And Nation, today is the last day of July, if you are listening to this podcast when it drops to the public, which means we are really sailing through this year, which means next month, which is really tomorrow, next Friday rather, is the start of Legionella Awareness Month. We're going to have a brand new episode for you each and every Friday around Legionella and waterborne pathogens. And when I go to different trade shows and conventions and trainings, so many people tell me how much they have learned during the Legionella Awareness Month series. I anticipate that there is going to be more of that in 2026 this year. So stay tuned. Each and every Friday, we're going to have a brand new episode for you. And speaking of training, I want you to know that you have not missed your opportunity if you have not been to the Association of Water Technologies technical training this year. Now, that's unusual because normally this time of year, you would have had to wait until next year. Well, AWT is doing something a little bit differently this year. They did technical training in March, and then instead of doing it again in April like they normally do, they're holding it again in November. So you have not missed your chance. The 2026 Association of Water Technologies Technical Training is taking place November 11th through 14th in Frisco, Texas. And Nation, I will be there. I hope that you will be there. They're doing something special with wastewater this year, so it's going to be part 2. If you didn't go to part 1, you're going to be fine in part 2. But if you did go to part 1, you're going to learn even more in part 2. And did I mention I'm going to be there? I hope to see you there. And we're going to have all the information that you're going to need to register just by going to scalinguph2o.com, going over to our events page. And not only will you see the Association of Water Technologies technical training for November 11th through 14th, you will also see all the other events that we have that are just waiting for you to look at. And then after you look at them, maybe you will find something that you want to attend that's going to change the trajectory of your career. Nation, I sure hope to see you at the technical training. And I sure hope that you are taking advantage of all the wonderful events that we have in our industry that can help us all be better water treaters. Well, Nation, our friend James McDonald is helping all of us be better water treaters each and every week with a brand new episode of Words of Water. And here that is right now.
Hello and welcome to Words of Water with James, the industrial water game show where I give you the definition and you get to guess the word or phrase being defined. Will you rise to the top or get blown down to try your luck another day? There's only one way to find out on Words of Water with James. Today's definition means water-loving and refers to substances that are attracted to water. Can you guess the word or phrase? The answer is hydrophilic. Okay, for those who got it correct, step to the right. For those who got it wrong, please step to the left. I sure hope you are all feeling hydrophilic today. I'm James McDonald, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Words of Water with James.
Well, thank you, James. And Nation, recently I had a conversation with James, and he's thinking about making a book all about all of the different cases that Detective H2O has solved over the years. I think that's a great idea. So if there was a book out there, would you use that in your training? Would you use that to maybe encourage people to get in the industry? Maybe explain to your kids what it is that you do? I think I would. James, I think that's a book that the world needs. So the Nation, I think, stands with you. And Nation, as soon as that book's available, I will let you know. Well, Nation, when I set out to educate the nation, it is not just on water treatment. It's on anything that I feel will help you in your water treatment endeavors. And maybe that's running a business. Maybe that's running a territory. Maybe that's running an account. Well, all of that boils down to business. And if we don't understand simple business practices, we're not going to be as valuable as we could if we understood those practices. So it's my hope that you are getting educated on this podcast on all things that allow us to be the best at what it is that we do. And today's interview is all about business, and I think this one is greatly going to help you. Here's that interview. My lab partner is Tracy Bech, founder and author of the 60-Minute CFO, business finance educator and strategist. Tracy, welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Hi, Trace. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
We are happy to have you here. I know we've tried to schedule this for a while, but it's finally here. We did it.
Yes, we did. We're both at our desks at the same time and can do it. I love it.
Tracy, would you mind introducing yourself to the Scaling Up Nation?
Sure. So I am a serial entrepreneur. I've worked for myself for 25 years, and I've started, run, and sold various businesses, one in the service-based industry and one in the products-based industry. So the first one was a web design and development company, and the second one sort of spun off from there, and it was an e-commerce business. Where I find myself now is when you sell a business, and I didn't have a real plan after the second business sold, I became a business consultant. And it happened to align really well with some work my dad and mentor had been doing and has always done in his life, which is business finance consulting. And the combination of that runway for me being first in services and then in products really required that I become financially fluent across various types of businesses. And I found myself as a consultant really diving into the numbers And with my dad, we ended up building out the 60-minute CFO framework. He has the BA and the MBA in business and finance. And then I have what I call the real world MBAs from, figuring it out myself, being pretty bullheaded and honestly pretty resistant to becoming financially fluent myself. But I'm here now as an educator and a strategist for folks who are just like me, who are in business because they have a service, a product, a skill that the world needs, and then realized that those businesses come with a side of finance. So I try to speak in terms that entrepreneurs and operators and salespeople and technicians understand and really help them move the needle and pull the levers they need to in order to be financially fluent and make those strategy changes to have a really healthy business, right? Because businesses need cash and profits and all these things, and those are all the finances.
Does anybody ever start a business because they love finances?
No. And, I know we're both speakers. When I get in the room, one of my icebreakers is raise your hand if you started your business because you love business finance, and not a single hand goes up. It's just not where we start, right? We start because we have another passion or skill or talent or trade. Then along comes the finance.
And I would bet if you followed up with the question, how many didn't start their business as soon as they wanted to because maybe they were terrified of finance, a few more hands would have gone up.
Exactly. I do. I work with a lot of founders and pre-founders, people who are thinking about getting into the rings, and they're terrified. They're terrified because there's a lot of money and a lot of risk on the line. But I was lucky enough to get into business when I was a stupid 23-year-old, so I was immortal as you are in your 20s, and risk felt like something that should be taken. And as we get older, we become more and more risk averse and, wiser, and we don't want to do stupid things, but we also, a lot of us have wiring or preconceptions about ourselves that we aren't maybe numbers people. There's people who shy away from technology, people who shy away from math. And that's also the greatest thing about business finance, honestly, because we're never going above a third grade level for any of our calculations. It's adding, subtracting, and dividing and multiplying. We don't go past that. And so if we can kind of get past this idea that numbers are scary and they're not our friends, our framework is turning the numbers into stories. Stories are, anthropologically how humans have always learned and shared information, all the way back to the cavemen, and the writings on the walls are stories and pictures. And that's really how we teach business finances. Somebody told me, I told them what I do, and they go, oh my gosh, when I look at my financials, it could be a phone number for all I know. Those numbers mean nothing. And I was like, yeah, that's because we're not meant to. We're humans. We have to turn them into stories. And that's so important and so doable.
Now, we have business owners that listen to this podcast. We have a lot of technicians that listen to this podcast. All the technicians listening, they're thinking, okay, well, I'm not a business owner. Should I even continue listening to this podcast? What do you want to say to them?
No, do not skip ahead. Stay with us, because really, truly, this is a team effort. One of my favorite books is called The Great Game of Business. You might know it. It's a whole platform for running a company. It's really based on open book management. And the idea is that our finances are just one of the scores in our game of business. And we all care about the score. I coached my daughter's lacrosse team when she was like in first grade. And at that level, they don't keep score. And the kids were beside themselves. They're like, but how do we know if we're winning? And we all want to know if we are winning, right? All the way down into the field, we want to know, are we winning? Is what I'm doing contributing to the overall score and the health and wellness of our company? And there are ways that when you understand some of the overarching finances for your company, the leadership can help show you what the scorecard looks like. It can lead to all kinds of operational things that technicians can contribute to. I recently had, this is not your industry, but I recently had my HVAC guy come over and service my air conditioner, because we're all hoping the weather changes here pretty soon. And he said, at the end of his service, can you please make sure to give me a review, because it helps our company be found and trusted, and other customers know that they should hire us. And I also get an incentive when I drive reviews. And somewhere in his leadership team, all the way down to the technician level, he was told that our company will be more successful when you go in the field and you do great work and you get that 5-star review, right? So it trickles all the way down and all the way up. And so there's lots of different ways we can measure that.
Well, I know you've worked with several water treatment companies, and I don't think it's unique to this industry, but I know it does happen in our industry. Water treaters and water treatment business owners seem to think that we're isolated, our business is different than everybody else. What do you say to that?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, you are. And absolutely, you are right. And you should not settle for one size fits all information, especially because there's a lot of ways that we can figure out what good looks like for your industry. And I know, Tracy, I know you talk about that a lot. We need to figure out what good looks like. We got to get out of our day to day, out of our single lane and, blinders on and look up and see what our industry is talking about. But I can also tell you what the really good news is. And one of the things that I really love about doing business finance is that it's one of these steady constants that once you learn it, it will apply to your business today and tomorrow and the next day. And you don't wake up in the morning and some new technology has disrupted it or AI has taken it, in a totally different world. Those principles will always remain the same. So the good news is you can actually lean on friends from outside the industry, professionals from outside your industry who can adapt the metrics and the benchmarks for the water treatment industry. But luckily, some of the key ratios and performance indicators and principles are the same. And that's actually great too. If you're thinking about expanding your business or pivoting, this finance work that you do will carry forward wherever you go.
So there's so many successful businesses out there that are still confused about their finances. Why is that?
Well, it's just because we are usually, and this is not a diss, if I've got finance professionals on the call, I am not trying to speak disparagingly of the industry, of the profession, but they are not taught in school how to translate, for lack of a better term, finance jargon into day-to-day business operations speak. Right? They'll say things like you need to increase your margin, you need to increase your safety, you need to increase your liquidity, you need to increase your working capital, you need to address your operating cash flow. And we just kind of go, we freeze. That's too many things. I remember one year my CPA, before I learned all this stuff, was like, what were your retained earnings? And I was like, what's retained earnings? I don't know, and he's like, well, it's off in your balance and your ledger and my balance and my ledger. I mean, they just come at us with a barrage of terms. And I also remember asking, well, can you explain that to me? And the wording and the explanation came back the exact same way they said it the first time. And so I said, maybe I got brave enough to ask the question again. Can you still explain it? I still don't understand it. And guess what? The exact same answer came back. The third time, I'm not going to ask it, right? Like what I'm going to do is assume that I'm not smart enough and that this is not my lane. And then I'm just going to have to trust that whatever that person said is right. And I'll get back to what I know, what I'm good at. Right. And that's how I sat for a long time in business. It wasn't until my second business that grew really fast and I had inventory that I almost grew broke. Like I almost had so much revenue and so many profits and was feeding that engine at such a rapid rate that I almost ran out of cash that I had to really buckle down and learn this stuff. But yeah, it's really nobody's fault. It's just the way it's been. And there is a new school of thought coming, which is much more around advisory accounting and meeting our clients where they are in the finance world. But if and until that becomes the norm, we will still have this gap between business owner and financial professional. And unfortunately, or fortunately for me, because it's what I do, really the person who's the most incentivized to close the gap and has the most to gain from it is not the finance pro. Because you're going to hire them to do your taxes, whether you understand it or not, because the IRS told you to. It's the business owner, because they want to see more money in their bank account, more money in their pockets, more profits, more revenue, a steadier business, right? So we have, as business owners, the most to gain from becoming financially fluent. And that's my job. My job is to speak in business owner language and bridge that gap.
Well, speaking of the gap, how do we get from I feel that my business is successful to I know my business is financially healthy?
Yeah. So I love working with entrepreneurs because so many of them know intuitively what it takes to run a good business. If you start to ask them for, a cash flow statement and their projections and their forecast, it's all up here and I'm pointing to my head, right? It's intuitive. We just kind of know. And that gets us really, really far until it stops working because our business has grown and there's literally more moving parts, departments, people, and we start to kind of become a little unsure because we can't keep it all in our head. And that's when we go into the old adage of what gets measured gets managed. And we have to start finding visibility into our financials. And we were talking about this, it's the difference between looking at financials and not knowing what we're looking for and getting a barrage of data and kind of drinking from a fire hose and going, well, that was time not well spent, to coming at it from a framework and some key performance indicators, some ratios that we're going to calculate. And now those ratios have meanings. Each ratio has a name. Each ratio has a definition. Each ratio comes with interpretation metrics, right? And each ratio can be measured against a benchmark for our industry. And instantly, it's like going from me asking you, Trace, what kind of car do you drive and how many miles can it go? To me going, Trace, what kind of car do you drive and what is the mileage per gallon? Right? We don't talk about how many miles our cars can go. We talk about mileage per gallon. That's fuel efficiency. We want to know how efficient is your car. But so many times we get stuck on these, well, how many miles? And we would never do that in so many other places, right? So we start to make relationships, miles to gallon. And in finance, it's usually, especially if we're talking about profits to revenue. We want to know as a percentage of revenue, how much was your profit, not just $50,000, $100,000, right? We start making meaning by creating relationships. So yeah, creating visibility also.
In my work with other water treatment business owners that maybe don't know their numbers as well as they should, when we do talk about profit, they almost act like that's a dirty word. Why is that?
Well, I guess there's lots of reasons for that. And I think there are lots of different types of people who we all operate differently in our lives, right? And I was recently talking to a pricing expert, and she taught me that the way that we price our products is the way that we shop for our products. So if we inherently feel taken advantage of, if we know someone's making a profit off of us, we probably won't want to really profit off of our customers. So I would almost argue that this is something that we have in our own wiring as leaders, as operators, as managers. But what we really need to do is back that up. And I need to tell you that, your business cannot exist without profits, and you owe it to your customers and you owe it to your employees to have profits. Not a dirty word. In fact, it is the oxygen, it is the lifeblood of being here tomorrow for everybody that you serve. So no, please don't think of it like that.
I heard somebody quote it, and I can't remember who it is. They said, no margin, no mission.
Yeah. Yeah. I have another company that I work with is, we're not here to practice. We're here to make money. Like we can go out and do this and it's not a hobby. It's not something we're just practicing. We're really doing it, and I was like, yes, we are really here to do this. It's not a game that we're playing for fun. We need to win.
Well, you said we need certain metrics to run the business. We need certain KPIs, key performance indicators. So what are maybe the three top ones that everybody that's in business just needs to know?
Oh my gosh. Well, let me give you the one that everyone cares about. And guess what? It's not revenue. We need revenue. But what I want people to really think about is, how efficient is your revenue? Is your revenue earning you enough money to stay in business? And you're going to guess, oh, she must be talking about profits. And I am talking about profits, but I'm talking about a specific kind of profit. So what I teach is there are 3 levels of profitability. And the one that is the most important is the one that's most often overlooked. In fact, every time, again, when I speak or when I teach, I ask people which one is the most important. And the 3 are gross profit margin, operating profit margin, and net profit margin. I get plenty of votes for operating profit margin and net profit margin, and I get no votes for gross profit margin. But in fact, gross profit margin is our most important margin. And it's because it's the money we have left after we have spent the money that we need in order to produce our goods or service. Okay. So it's the cost of goods. It's our revenue minus our cost of goods or our cost of service. The reason it's the most important is because if our profitability is broken at that level, in other words, if it's too low, we will not have enough money to run the rest of our company. And what we need to do is ensure that our pricing and our costs to deliver our goods and services have enough margin in them so that we have enough money to both run the company and have net profits left at the end of the year. So you can imagine that if for some reason, our gross profit margin is only 20%, and we sell our product for $100 and we have $20 left over, we have to somehow find our rent, our administrative salaries, our insurance, our professional fees, our utilities, everything else has to come out of there. And then we are skating on thin ice, especially if we watch revenue drop at all. So you asked me for 3 metrics. That's number 1. Our gross profit margin is truly the battle we have to win in order to win all of the downstream wars. I'm allowed to use water metaphors. Yes, downstream.
Absolutely. We welcome those here.
And the stronger your gross profit margin is, the stronger all of your profit margins will be. Okay, because it trickles down. There's one more water for you. Okay, so I started with the one that's the most palatable. The other 2 are on your balance sheet, and they are directly tied. So if you don't have enough profits year over year, you're going to start to erode your balance sheet. Your balance sheet is the thing nobody wants to look at. It gets totally overlooked, and yet it is the foundation of our business. And I'm going to tell you why. There's 2 ratios that live on our balance sheet, and they measure liquidity, another water word, and safety. Liquidity is our ability to pay our bills, and safety is our ability to withstand adversity. So if we're only looking at our profits, but we're not taking care of our liquidity and our safety, eventually our foundation starts to crumble. So liquidity, the measure of liquidity is purely our short-term assets divided by our short-term liabilities. So short-term assets are everything other than your gross fixed assets. So all of our machinery and furniture and fixtures, those are fixed assets. And our short-term assets are cash and anything that can be converted to cash in the next 12 months. So if you have inventory that you turn pretty quickly, and if you have accounts receivable and your cash. Okay, so it's things that are pretty liquid that we can spend on. The current liabilities is what we divide that by and relate it to. The current liabilities are everything that we need to pay in the next 12 months. So it's our accounts payable, it's our short-term loans if we have a line of credit that we need to keep current on and reduce to 0 once a year. It's our payroll, it's our rent, it's all of those payables, right? So when we relate the 2, you can imagine if the ratio between the 2 is 2, if we have twice as many current assets for as many liabilities that we have, we could pay all of our bills twice. However, if our current ratio, our liquidity is 0.5, that means we have 50 cents of cash for every $1 that we owe. So we can only pay half of our bills. And all of this information is on our balance sheet, but we don't look at it, but we can kind of intuit it. We sort of know. Everyone has sort of a ticker tape of how much cash they have versus how many bills they have, but it's all of that information is in this tidy, again, 3rd grade math calculation. We divide current assets by current liabilities. Those 2 words literally show up on any balance sheet and you will have a number. Okay, so that's liquidity. It's our ability to pay our bills. Okay, and the 3rd one is safety. Safety is our ability to withstand adversity, and it is calculated by dividing all of our debt. So whether it's a long-term loan or a short-term loan, so all of those current liabilities plus anything that we owe long-term on, all of that payment divided by our equity. And our equity is how much money we have in the game in our own shareholder contributions and retained earnings. And our debt is how much money other people have invested in our company. So when we divide debt by equity, again, we get a number. And that is the ratio of how much skin we have in the game compared to how much skin other people have in the game. And the reason it matters is as that number approaches 3, banks and other lenders become less likely to lend money to you. So your ability to withstand adversity when you hit adversity becomes lessened because you would not be able to get a loan if and when you need it. So we have to be aware, are we at our lending threshold or are we below it? If we needed a loan, are we lendable or not right now? And if we manage all three of these, our gross profit margins, our liquidity, and our safety, those are a virtuous cycle, because what we do is if we need to increase our safety, we use profits and retain them in earnings, and those earnings go into our equity, and that boosts our safety. They also go into our cash, which is a current asset, and that boosts our liquidity. So they're a virtuous cycle, and if we keep an eye on all three, we have our bases pretty well covered.
That's a great visual that you just gave. A question I have for you is, so many teams know the P&L, the profit and loss statement, pretty well, and they can probably tell you what their operating revenue is, what their net profit is, but they're not bringing the balance sheet into those discussions. Why is that?
Well, it's boring.
Okay.
It's boring. The balance sheets are boring, and it doesn't have any, and I say this with love, it doesn't have any of our vanity metrics on it. It doesn't have our revenue. We're so proud of revenue. Revenue shows such an easy score. We have higher revenue than we did last year, right? We're winning. And it doesn't have our profits. We love profits too. Or for those people who think they're a dirty word, hopefully I've convinced them to like profits. But the balance sheet's just kind of boring. I mean, it does have our cash on there, but we can see that when we log into our bank account. And the assets don't move a ton. And who wants to look at the liabilities? Those are a drag, right? So we don't look at it because it just doesn't have those exciting metrics on them. But it's also because we aren't calculating those ratios I just mentioned. Once we start calculating ratios, it becomes a lot more fun. It's a lot more interesting and easy to digest.
Before we jump back into our discussion, we're going to take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors. Hey there, Scaling Up Nation. Today, I want to talk to you about a hidden threat lurking in your cooling water systems: biofilm. You know, that slimy stuff that causes all sorts of headaches for us water treaters. But don't worry, because I've got some great news for you. Our friends at AMSA have developed products that are absolute powerhouses when it comes to biofilm control. These aren't your typical products used in biofilm control programs. Oh no, they're much more than that. AMSA's products actually penetrate and break up those stubborn, gluey deposits. This means your biocides can work more effectively and at lower levels too. Plus, it weakens the biofilm matrix, allowing it to be washed away with the flow of water. By incorporating AMSA products into your biofilm control program, you can say goodbye to your concerns about microbiologically influenced corrosion, scale formation, reduced cooling efficiency, and even minimize the risk of Legionella in your systems. So if you want to clean it up and keep it clean, head over to scalinguph2o.com/AMSA to learn more about their innovative biofilm control solutions. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/AMSA. Trust me, your cooling water systems will thank you. Let's dive back in right where we left off. Now, you mentioned everybody has to file taxes. If you want to stay free in this country, you have to file taxes. So we have somebody that's doing taxes. I think there's a lot of people out there that think, okay, somebody looked at my books for last year. We filed the taxes. I'm still outside of the prison, so I know everything's good. But it's looking at what happened last year, and very few people look forward. Do you mind speaking to that?
Yeah. So that is such a great point. And being able to forecast your financials is honestly the whole point. So when I teach this, I tell everybody, here's the good news. There are only 3 steps to becoming quote unquote financially fluent. When I graduate you from my course, you take these 3 steps. Okay. So the first one is learning your ratios. And I've already taught you 3 of them. There's 14. They're not rocket science, I promise. There's 14 key ratios. The second step, so you know your ratios. The second step is understanding the difference between cash and profits. And that's a whole nother episode, right? Story in and of itself. And then the third step is using, like you said, the past to learn how to forecast the future, because we can't change the past. And we're either happy with it or unhappy with it. So we have ideas for how we want the future to go. And until we understand the strategies behind how to fix it, we end up just having to accept whatever comes our way. But when you get your strategies and you understand why things went the way they went, now you actually create your forecast and your marching orders. You know exactly how to achieve that. So that is the third, and I would argue probably one of the most fulfilling steps, because otherwise we're just sort of taking our scorecard and going, shoot. But instead, when we learn to forecast, now we're huddled up, right? Take a time out and we go out on the field again with a plan to change the score, which is really fun.
So obviously, this type of planning would happen on the executive team. How should it be passed down to the people that are actually working within the company?
So I also believe that good ideas can come from anywhere. So I think it's a really important exercise. While you might not do all of your planning with everybody, it's really important to start taking information in, especially from your sales team and from the people in the field, right? How are our customers responding to our services? What are some challenges that our techs are experiencing? How can we reduce friction for them or for our customers? Same thing on the sales team side of things. What can we do? Again, open book management is what they teach in the Great Game of Business, but I really believe in making sure everybody knows how we are setting our forecast and feeling like they have a little bit of say in that. But otherwise, yes, I say your team is going on a road trip with you, whether you like it or not, right? You're all on a bus or a car and we're all trying to go somewhere. And if you don't have a plan and you don't communicate to them, you are saying, we don't know where we're going, but we will go somewhere. And how are they supposed to help you get there? Right? Someone has a map, someone has the wheel, someone has their foot on the gas, someone's got the snacks. We're all here ready to help. But if we do not tell our team where we are going, we will not get there. Right? The chances of getting there, wherever there is, are very low. There's a lot of places you could go. So the planning exercise is to say, we are getting in the car in Austin, Texas, and we are trying to arrive in Seattle, Washington, and we're going to do our very best to get there. And we are going to recognize there are probably 6 different ways to get there, and 5 of them probably have construction, and one of them probably has a giant storm on the way. And if and when we hit that, we can detour as necessary, but we want to continue heading north and west, right? And if we end up in Spokane or we end up in Portland, that's still great, but we have to at least head out in the direction. That's the other thing, is one of the biggest things that stops people from planning is a fear of not getting there and looking like a failure in front of their team. Oh, shoot, I said we were going to get to Seattle and we didn't get there. Well, you're not there yet, first of all, and it's still better than not telling them at all, because you might end up in New York or you might not go anywhere. So I really encourage people to get out the map and place the destination on it. It's an important part of it.
You've mentioned open book management a couple of times. I know that there's people listening saying, well, maybe some things I feel okay sharing, other things I just am nervous about sharing. How would you address that?
Yeah, I really want to make sure that you do not overshare things that your team has no control over. It's a fruitless effort and it makes them feel very helpless and out of control. So I wouldn't necessarily share with your entire operations team your cash position, right? It is really none of their day-to-day worries whether or not, the bank account is at 0 or not. That is just not going to help anybody on the team to have that. That is actually one of the things that if you're the head of the company, you get to own that. But what we do want to know is, if we have a revenue goal, we want to know how many jobs it's going to take, or how many customers, or how many projects, or how many proposals that we have to win to get there, right? That might be one thing. And we sure can keep a tally of how far we are to that goal, right? The other thing we can do is, if we have a gross profit margin goal, we can also keep a running year-to-date average of what our projects are at a gross profit margin level. Because your sales team and your technicians, if we are not actively pushing change orders through, adjusting prices and cutting discounts off and selling at the right pricing, those are things everyone can control, right? And we do want them to own that. We want them to say, ooh, we aren't meeting our targets. We need to either go close more deals, or we need to raise our margins. We need to do better. These are things we can actually affect. So be careful and don't burden your team with stuff that's actually, they have 0 control over what's in the bank account, but they can help control, what's in the pipeline, what's our margins, depending on where they are in the company.
Well, let's flip that script a little bit. And now we've got people that are working in the field And maybe they haven't been given metrics. Maybe they want to know how valuable they are or what they can do to reach the revenue goal that they've been giving. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I would say we get to be creative with how we can show what their contribution is to our revenue or our margins, right? So is it doing on time, quality, accurate work? Reducing the need for maintenance that comes back to hit us, haunt us that we have to do pro bono, things that increase the overall quality, things that reduce expenses. I work a lot in the moving and storage industry, which is not doesn't share a ton of similarities with the water industry, but their drivers and their movers, who you would think would have very little impact on the overall, top margins and revenue, are taught, to ask for referrals, to get great reviews, and to reduce claims, right? To reduce damages, to reduce just poor workmanship. And those things are all tracked on a leaderboard, well, where people are doing the work I recommend. And they are also on at all hands meetings publicly appreciated and rewarded for meeting those metrics. And that goes a long way as well.
So if somebody's listening today and they're thinking, I should have done all of this years ago, I haven't done it, I need to start doing it, I don't know where to start, how should they start?
Well, first of all, the best time to plant the tree was 20 years ago, and the next best time to plant the tree is today. So do not beat yourself up. I was easily in business for 12 years before I cared about my balance sheet. It just, throw that narrative out. It's totally fine. And I honestly would recommend the best thing you can do, and I guess it kind of depends on where you are and what your accounting team looks like and how easy it is for you to get your eyes on your metrics, is to literally just start planning to spend some time gathering your financial data, right? Income statement and balance sheet on a monthly basis for the previous month. Okay, so if it's March and we aren't done with this month yet, it would be February's income statement and balance sheet. And you're going to want to start understanding, is this accurate? Is this up to date? Do I understand any of it? And then honestly, this is not meant to be gratuitous, but I would read my book. I would read the first 4 chapters. And those, luckily, because it's in the name, would take you about 60 minutes to read those first 4 chapters and just start orienting yourself. The other thing that I want to remind everybody of is really anytime you go in to learn any new skill is to have a beginner's mindset and understand that you're starting where you are. I like to tell people, you will never know everything there is to know about business finance. I don't feel like I know everything there is to know. There's always more to learn. So start exactly where you are and just incrementally learn something new each day. And you will, before you know it, this is like going to the gym. That's the bad news. That's the bad news. I'm sorry to tell you, this is a lot like health and wellness and strength training. These are muscles that you are creating. And the more you use them, the stronger you will get. But the less you use them, the more you will lose them. So this is just it's a lot like speaking a new language, right? It's, if you learn Spanish in high school and then you don't speak Spanish again until you're 50 years old, you probably forgot a lot of your Spanish, right? It's still in there, but you're going to have to dredge it up. So stay fluent. Financial fluency is a language, and just start creating these habits. The other thing we say at 60 Minutes CFO is it's a 1 hour a month, 16 minutes per month. You might front load that if you have not looked at your finances ever, to give yourself the foundation. But then it's an ongoing habit. But the good news is that you don't have to go to the gym every day. You go to the gym once a month for this, and you will be amazed at how much more fluent you are.
So, what are some of the big differences with people that know their numbers when it comes to decisions like growth and hiring and pricing?
So once you start knowing those 3 ratios that I taught, you start to realize that when you manage those 3 things in concert, you're taking much more calculated risks, which we love to do. I mean, business owners by definition are risk takers, right? Whether we're super risky or less so, we are more so than the average bear, right? We just are. If we didn't like risk, we would go get jobs for other people. So, and if that's you, you're just know that the people at the top are out there thinking strategically, and you're just going to start looking at your business through a multifaceted lens. So, for example, you might go from being just growth minded to thinking, well, I would like to actually be really stable. I would like my business to be really, really stable. How can I change my mentality from chasing revenue and chasing profits to maybe that of more being a stable company and building stability and longevity and the ability to withstand adversity? And that shift is something where, like, let's just use an example. Let's say you have a big contract come through and it's wildly profitable, and you're going to have a bigger year in revenue and profits this year than you would ever have seen. 5 years ago, if that had happened to you, you would have taken all of that profit and bought a bunch of equipment and distributed the rest to your bank account and bought a boat. Okay? Because we work so hard and we deserve it, right? So that might be your mentality if you were not thinking about your balance sheet. Because if you were thinking, well, wait, I actually kind of value also a really stable business because I'm 60 years old and I'm thinking about retiring. And I actually kind of think I would like to shore this up and get it really stable and maybe get it ready for private equity to come in, right? What you would do with that enormous profit is you would distribute some money to pay your taxes and give yourself a pat on the back. You'd probably put the boat off for another year, and you would take those extra dollars and either retain them in the company to boost your equity or put them against some of your long-term liabilities, which would increase. Both of those two things are going to stabilize your company. It's going to increase your safety. It's going to increase your ability to withstand adversity. And when you start thinking through it on a multifaceted lens like this, next thing you know is one good year can stabilize your business for the next 10. And conversely, one bad year can destabilize your business for the next 10. So we give ourselves just decisions that have long-term really great benefits when we have more visibility.
Right now, I know in all industries, but especially in the water treatment industries, all of our boomers are retiring and they're trying to figure out what to do with their businesses. Some have figured that out a long time ago and they're just executing that plan. Others are just starting to think about it now. What do you want to say to them?
So in the book and in my courses, I teach the 4 phases of business. And they are the startup phase, the high growth phase, the maturity phase, and the decline phase. And they are otherwise also called wonder, blunder, thunder, and plunder. And as you get older, you tend to, and you're looking to exit, you have probably reached thunder. Your business is in the maturity phase, but you might also be in plunder. It's very, very sneaky because on paper, the two are almost identical. It's very hard to detect if your company is in decline or plunder because you have almost all of the same hallmarks as you do in thunder, but they're just a little bit lower. So you have high profits, you have high margins, and you have high cash flow and high equity, but it's a little bit less than it was last year and a little bit less than it was the year before. So you literally see this mountain, the graph going up, 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 up through wonder, blunder, which is high growth because you blunder around when you're in high growth, maturity, which is thunder, and then plunder, you kind of start to taper off. And I would say, watch out. And there's a very high chance you have become less risk tolerant. You have probably started to pull back the reins a little bit. Like you're not taking as many risks. Therefore, you might, not be going after as many new products, new technologies, new customers, pivoting into like slightly newer adjacent industries, right? We're a little bit comfortable. And if there is any way before you exit to install the next generation of leadership and management who is interested in keeping the company on the edge of high growth and maturity, that is going to be very appetizing to a buyer for 2 reasons. One is you've created an opportunity for growth because you strategically have shown that you're interested and slightly invested in a new growth opportunity. And 2, you have invested in the next generation of leaders. So you yourself are less needed on a day-to-day basis. That combined with a solid income statement, right? You still want to be profitable, and a decent balance sheet is going to align you for a wonderful exit. And again, everything that we just talked about, Trace, you can look at it through that lens as well, right? I'm talking about it as operating your business through these 14 key ratios, but you can also apply it to exiting your business. And you would want to optimize them in the exact same way, because a buyer is going to love that, right? If you have optimized your ratios and also put in that next generation of leadership, you are in such a great spot to exit your company.
So many great points today. If you could just get one across, what do you want to underscore?
I think that honestly, this is easier than you think. If you are listening to me going, oh my goodness, in theory, yes, this all sounds so wonderful, but I just know how I feel when I look at my financials, I would just say, give it another chance, give it another go. Think of it as there's a story here that I'm trying to uncover, and then be open to letting that in. I think that's really the first step, is just having a beginner's mindset, knowing you're not going to know everything there is to know, and it's totally okay. But that as a leader, especially as a leader, when you become financially fluent, you gain a superpower. You really do. And it has been, for the people I work with, and also for me personally, the best skill that I've added to my toolkit in running a business. So I just would highly encourage you to forge that next frontier. It's just there waiting for you.
I love that. It makes me think well over 20 years ago, I was in a group called Vistage, and there was a CFO on that group, and he volunteered to meet with me. And I didn't know my numbers, and he told me what to bring. I couldn't answer the questions that he was asking me, and I was embarrassed. And I'm a business owner. I should know these things. And that was all in my head. He knew I didn't know those things, and he taught me all those things. So if we get out of our own way and let people like yourself help us, we're going to be so much better off.
I know. And it's truly, there's no shame in this. How would you know? Right. And just like I could not come in, step in your shoes and run a water treatment facility or, industrial water treatment operations, I can't do that. So I would have to ask every single question in the book. And I think we just, we need to totally be okay with that. And I also believe if you run into the people who can't answer that question for you that you have, push back. Say, you have to explain that to me again. Right? You have got to find a way to put it into entrepreneurial terms for me, because it just does not make sense. And just keep saying it. And that's what I require of my students. I say, I am not allowed to move on from answering your question until I have said it in the words that you need to hear. Right? Because it's possible. It's just something that's kind of been embedded and has historically been accepted, generally speaking, in the finance industry.
Could you tell us more about your book and your courses?
Sure. The book is called 60-Minute CFO. It is not to disparage it in any way, but it also could be called Finance for Dummies. Like, it is literally meant to cover the basics, and it's said in entrepreneurial terms. So I highly recommend that. And it's on Amazon. And then otherwise, I teach and I speak and I do online coaching at 60minutecfo.com. I have a financial fluency gym that you can join if you want to come work out with me. And I show up there live twice a month. And then I also do a boot camp style teaching. There's one coming up. Actually, I think it'll probably have passed, but I teach them quarterly. And that's all of my dates and things are on my website at 60minutecfo.com.
And we'll make sure to have all those links on our show notes page to make it very easy for people listening to find you.
Perfect.
I'm not quite done. I've got some lightning round questions
Oh,
if you're ready to enter into that zone.
I'm kind of long-winded, so you'll have to cut me off. But yes, I'm ready.
Tracy, if you could go back in time and talk to your former self on your very first day as an entrepreneur, what advice would you give yourself?
Well, shocker, I would say stop being so bullheaded about understanding finance.
Shocker.
You got to learn it somehow, though. And I like to learn my lessons the hard way. So everything I've learned, I learned the hard way. And I guess I'm grateful for that.
What are the last few books that you've read?
Oh, I have read, I actually have them here. I have read Grow Up Fast by Zach Ratner. He is an AI startup founder. fascinating, really great read. I've read Fearless Pricing by Casey Brown.
Love Casey.
Do you know Casey? Yes, Casey.
She's been on the podcast.
Yes, she's amazing. And we joke that if our two books had a baby, it would be inbred. I think there are literally pages in her book that are almost exactly the same as mine. And I know we didn't cheat off each other. And then I also recently read, this is kind of an interesting one, and it is a mindset book, and it is called Power versus Force: The Hidden Determinants of Human Behavior, which was fascinating. And a client sent it to me. It was completely out there and unlike anything I've ever read. So yes, those are my last 3 reads.
When they cast the movie about your life, who do you want playing Tracy?
Oh, well, it's kind of cliche, and I guess it just goes with my stature and hair color, but it would be a toss-up between Reese Witherspoon and Kristen Bell, probably.
They'd both be lucky to get the part.
That's so sweet.
My final question, you now have the ability to go back in time, talk with anybody throughout history. Who would you choose and why?
I think it would be Lady Bird Johnson. I just think she did such interesting things as the first lady for our country, and she was such a naturalist. And I would just love to know how she passed some of the things that she did for beautifying our country and preserving nature. I think she's so interesting. Plus, her name's Lady Bird.
Tracy Bech, 60 Minute CFO, thank you so much for coming on the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Oh, it was so fun. Thanks for having me, Trace.
Well, Tracy, once again, thank you for coming on the Scaling Up H2O podcast. And Nation, I think that you will agree. Tracy has an approach that makes understanding our finances and turning numbers into stories so much easier to understand. Now, whether you're a business owner or an operator, we all need to know what each other is saying. We all need to be able to communicate what we need to about an account, about a territory, about our company. And breaking things down into stories is just a fantastic idea. Now, many entrepreneurs start businesses because they have a passion for industrial water treatment, not because they love finances, not because they love reading and talking about numbers. In fact, just like Tracy said, many entrepreneurs have fear of numbers. They can be very intimidating. The balance sheet matters because it tells you about liquidity and safety, not just revenue and profit. That's the P&L statement, the profit and loss statement. Those ratios help leaders understand what a business can understand if a storm were to come. Tracy also reminds us that business finance principles are steady and durable even as technology markets change. So we're going to have AI that's probably going to do all this stuff for us. But if we don't understand what it's trying to tell us, we're the ones that still have to make those decisions. We need to understand what those numbers are saying. Nation, if you can become the best water treater that you can be because you understand and have the passion for the technical, and then put right behind that an understanding of the business to know that your account, your territory, your company is healthy, that you know that you can withstand certain storms, that you know because of those numbers, you're going to make different decisions than you would if you didn't have that information, you're going to be a great business leader. You're going to have a great company. So it's my hope that you enjoyed this episode, that it gave you some things to think about. And if you want to talk to Tracy and ask her maybe some direct questions, I know she would love to talk to you. I have all of her contact information on our show notes page. Nation, being a successful water treater is about everything, not just one thing. And it's my hope that you use this podcast to learn about all those things so you can make better decisions each and every day. And of course, you already made the best decision, which of course was listening to this podcast. And I hope you make that same decision next Friday when we have a brand new episode for you then. Take care, everybody. Accelerate your success. Why go it alone when you can get further faster and have more fun doing it? The Rising Tide Mastermind offers a dynamic environment where you can grow professionally and personally while enjoying the journey. To find out more about the Rising Tide Mastermind, go to scalinguph2o.com/mastermind. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/mastermind. Find out if the Rising Tide Mastermind is right for you.